What are your plans for it?
How uncharacteristic of one of your reputation. You have taken both commission and payment. Is it not the code of the guild that these events are now forgotten? That Beskar is enough to make a handsome replacement for your armor. Unfortunately, finding a Mandalorian in these trying times is more difficult than finding the steel.
Ooh, yeah. Greetings, my fellow mighty Mandos. Mevar Tegar. Welcome to another exciting, action-packed episode of Mando Vision. New Nergai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We are still doing the show within a show format, where we are diving back into my original reviews and critiques of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. These are old podcasts that I did on our sister show, the Tomcast Popcast, but they were kind of being reappropriated and looked at with a new filter of time and the quarantine, where I've watched The Mandalorian about 18 more times since it originally aired. So maybe I have new thoughts, maybe I have different opinions. So I'm reviewing the reviews and I'm critiquing myself, and hopefully offering some more insights into the series, with the perspective of knowing where it goes and where it ends up, as opposed to what I did the first time around, where I didn't know. So kind of trying to give you guys something a little bit different. If you listen to it the first time around on the Tomcast podcast, I am trying to give you something new to chew on as we process these again. Or if you're just new to the show and it's new to you all around, I hope you're enjoying these. Like, again, trying to be insightful yet entertaining. This week we're reviewing Chapter 3, The Sin. This is directed by Deborah Chow and written by Jon Favreau. And before I kind of talk about a little bit more of that episode, I do want to encourage you to please follow us on social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. That would be super, super cool if you do that. And please make sure you are liked and subscribed to this podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. I want to make sure that we're on there. So this episode, this chapter 3, The Sin. This was a great episode when it first aired, but I think it's really become one of my favorites from the first season overall, as I've rewatched the season over and over and over again. This is an episode I really look forward to this. There's so much meat on this bone of the episode. I mean, this is the one where the Mandalorian, you've seen it already. So I mean, spoiler warning, but again, you guys have seen this already. You all have seen this. This is where our titular hero, the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, who is still unnamed at this point, he makes the decision that he will not aid the Empire in this in whatever their ill plan, their terrible evil plans for this child. He will not sit back and let it happen. He will basically, he's going to make Baby Yoda, the child, one of the potentially a foundling of the Mandalorian culture. Now, why is that important? Because this is an episode that really dives into some of the Mandalorian culture for us for the first time in a live action format. We are introduced to this is the way of the Mandalore. They talk about the Purge. What the Empire did to the Mandalorians during the Galactic Empire era. Whether it falls in the category of the Galactic Civil War or not, still to be determined. But a lot of really good chunks of Mandalorian mythology and lore are put on the front and center. We're told we are seeing the importance of the armorer. We are seeing the importance of having a sigil, and again, it's just a really, really fun episode and great action and everything. And yeah, obviously the culmination of the episode is the Mandalorian in his attempt to rescue the child, pinned deep. Every bounty hunter in that town now after him because the bounty's active again, and it's a great scene when those bounty trackers, those bounty tracking fobs go active all at the same time. You know, as the client has re-engaged the bounty, and everyone is now after our hero, and it doesn't look good for a little bit, but then we see something that I think fans like myself who are so invested in the Star Wars lore and the Star Wars mythology and of all the things that we haven't gotten to see, whether it's from old, now what's considered Star Wars Legends canon that doesn't count, I guess it's non-canon now, or if you grew up and you were watching Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels and you got to know the Mandalores through that. I think it's equal. This scene is equally important for all of us. The longtime fans who have seen the old Mandalore canon wiped away, and the new ones who grew up with the current standard canon. I think what happens next is equally exciting and impactful for all of us, which is the first live action arrival of a brigade of Mandalorian soldiers into battle, into combat, and just wailing away on these forlorn bounty hunters, including Grief Karga. It's one of those moments that I don't ask. I try not to ask I try not to ask too much of my Star Wars, but I do like to see something new, and seeing the arrivals of like I said, a brigade of Mandalorian soldiers to aid their comrade and to help him escape with the child was just so awesome, so fucking awesome. It was everything I'd ever wanted out of Star Wars for so very, very long. So this episode really, I watched it again last night actually. So I'm really kind of fired up and shot out of a cannon again because I watch it and that scene plays out in the back and forth of this is the way. Just it gets a little tear in the corner of my eyes, and I can't help it. I just love it so very, very much. Well, with that being said, I think it's time to get into the initial review I did of the episode. Remember, these were first done on the Tomcast Podcast, the sister podcast of this show, and you will notice the audio quality has been upgraded a little bit since we recorded these shows initially, particularly when it comes to recording the sound clips from the episodes. So you'll notice that right off the bat. Please excuse that. We're doing better now, though. The one positive to come out of COVID-19 and quarantining and stay-at-home orders is we got some better equipment here. So the Tomcast Podcast and Mandovision benefit significantly from that. All right, so strap on your buckets and let's dive into Chapter 3 of The Mandalorian, The Sin.
This amount can be shaped many ways.
My armor has lost its integrity. I may need to begin again.
Indeed. I can form a full cuirass. This would be in order for your station.
That would be a great honor.
I must warn you, it will draw many eyes.
These were cast in an Imperial smelter. These are the spoils of the Great Purge. The reason that we live hidden like sand rats.
Our secrecy is our survival. Our survival is our strength.
Our strength was once in our numbers. Now we live in the shadows and only come above ground one at a time. Our world was shattered by the Empire, with whom this coward shares tables.
The Empire is no longer, and the Beskar has returned. When one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey. How can one be a coward if one chooses this way of life? Have you ever removed your helmet?
No.
Has it ever been removed by others?
Never.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Oh, damn. That kind of sounded like a threat. I think that was a threat. Welcome to issue 56 of 3BZ Presents the Tomcast Popcast, aka Popcast. I am your host. My name is Tom. Thank you so much for tuning in to this special episode reviewing episode 3 of season 1 of The Mandalorian on Disney+. Chapter 3 of The Mandalorian is titled The Sin. It is directed by Deborah Chow and written by Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau, pretty sure he's going to have his hands all over this one throughout the end of the series, pretty much his story, and it's just being brought to life by a talented team of directors. Right off the bat, we should let you know, if you don't know already, that the director of this episode, Deborah Chow, has recently been named as the person in charge of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So pay attention to the stylistic flair that she uses in this episode, and you can kind of get a taste of maybe what we're going to see a little bit of on the Obi-Wan show. Hey, just to interject real quick, in case you haven't been paying attention to the news, the Obi-Wan show is delayed. Even before COVID shut everything down, the Obi-Wan show was being delayed, and it has now been sort of made known that the Obi-Wan show will only run for one season. So Ewan McGregor coming back, but in a very limited capacity, it seems like. All right, back to the show. All right, let's dive on in. This episode picks up basically where we left off. The Razor Crest exiting hyperspace back at the planet where our hero, the Mandalorian, first picked up this assignment to rescue the beautiful, the cute, the adorbs, Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda, I love you. And as he's coming out of hyperspace, he gets the message from his Bounty Hunter Guild contact, Reef Karga, played by Carl Weathers, and lets him know that once he lands, to take the bounty, to take the cargo, the asset, directly to the client for immediate payment. And as this hologram of grief is playing out, little Baby Yoda sitting behind the Mandalorian, gets out of his little pod and makes his way down to the floor. And he reaches up to one of the levers on the Razor Crest, and he takes this little ball off the top of off the top of one of the levers, and he tries to put it in his mouth. And the Mandalorian has to take it away from him, and it's adorable. Again, another kind of just showing how fucking wonderful this. I don't want to admit that Baby Yoda's a puppet, but we have to admit the puppetry that's being on display here, that's being put on display here, is goddamn impressive, and it's just wonderful. I mean, I can't. I've heard stories have started coming out now from actors on the set, just seeing this puppet and just losing their minds. I mean, about just how adorable and cute he is, and it's a puppet, but we love him so. All right, so they land on the planet. We're back on this mysterious unnamed planet, and Baby Yoda, we start to wonder, at least I start to wonder as this scene's sort of playing out, because as they're making their way from the Razor Crest, they're walking again through that town that we saw the Mandalorian walk through solo in the first episode, in the first chapter. And this time he has Baby Yoda with him, and Baby Yoda's just looking around like he did when they were walking through the canyons before. And he's just kind of taking it all in, but he's seeing sights that are very new to him, and maybe a little scary, maybe a little overwhelming. But he seems to be taking it in stride because he knows the Mandalorian's with him. He looks at the Mandalorian, and you kind of get the sense that Baby Yoda trusts the Mandalorian. And so that no matter what scary things might be around him in this strange new environment, the Mando is going to protect him. Or is he? Uh-oh. So he does, the Mando does as Grief tells him to do, and takes Baby Yoda back to the client. We see him banging on the door. The eyeball droid opens the hatch again. This time, stormtroopers come out. No gonk droids this time around. Stormtroopers come out, inspect Baby Yoda as the cargo, as the asset, and they allow entry to the Mando. And that's where we kind of get that scene that we used to open the show with. I'm a little ahead of myself, but we'll get there. So that's where that come from. You guys probably watched it. I hope you watched it. And yeah, and the Mando does what what he got paid to do, and he turns over Baby Yoda to that Imperial client and the strange scientist, and he goes against the code of the Bounty Hunters Guild, where he begins to ask questions, and that's the clip we played, and it sets off Werner Herzog's Imperial character, and we get a good piece of information here, especially as stormtroopers fill the room and begin to surround the Mandalorian. That and Werner Herzog's kind of going on his little spiel here about how there just aren't enough Mandalorians in the universe anymore. Tom from the future again. Yeah, that's the scene we used to open up this episode, and it's a great scene with Werner. Werner is just intense as he scalds the bounty hunter for kind of breaking the code of the Bounty Hunters Guild, and as he's talking and kind of chastising the bounty hunter, our friend the Mandalorian, stormtroopers are surrounding him in the room, and it's a really kind of a tense standoff between all those characters. Really, really well done stuff. And we really get the impression that the Mandalorians have been brought to the brink of extinction, much like the Jedi were by the Empire. It seems like the Empire's done the same to the Mandalorians. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, because another scene plays out. But the Mandalorian collects his bounty, all the Beskar that was promised to him, and he goes on his merry way. Well, maybe not that merry. So payment for the bounty is delivered in a camtono, which is, for all the astute Star Wars fans out there, the camtono is the name of the device that we saw way back when in Empire Strikes Back. Once Lando Calrissian issues the order to Cloud City to evacuate, you see a guy running through the halls of Cloud City with what looks like a weird ice cream maker. It is the stuff of legends in the Star Wars universe, for the truly observant and utterly fascinated by the weirdness of some of the Star Wars scenes. And for years and years, that's what we just said. This guy's running through the hallways with his ice cream maker. Turns out it's called a camtono, and it's a safe, basically. And that's what we see in this episode of The Mandalorian. We see how the camtono is opened. We see how treasure is stacked inside of it. And that is how the Imperial client delivers the Beskar payment to the Mandalorian. So that was a nice little touch right there, I thought. What also kind of sets this scene apart, too, is the facial expressions that Baby Yoda has as he's being delivered, as he's being taken into custody of these Imperials and of the scientists. You know, there's a scene where the scientist is flashing him with some kind of scanner, and it's just like affecting, kind of hurts his eyes. You can tell he looks away from it, doesn't like it very much. But then the real heartbreaking part is as the scientist is leading the pod into the next chamber, away from where the Mandalorian is at, the way the Baby Yoda just stares back at the Mandalorian with this mixture of fear in his eyes, a mixture of fear and uncomprehension of what's happening to it. And it's a really, again, I commended the puppeteering on this show, and I do it again because this like I said, it's heartbreaking. This puppet's making you cry, and I love it. Baby Yoda is the best. I'm gonna stop calling him a puppet because it's bothering me, and I don't want to think of him as a puppet because I love him so much. So, like we said, the bounty hunter then he collects his bounty. He's got the camtono full of Beskar, and he's gonna make his way back to the Mandalorian enclave that's here on the planet. And there's a lot of eyes on the Mandalorian as he makes his way back to the armorer. A really important exchange happens here as he meets with the armorer and delivers the Beskar. All right, so what's happening on the podcast right now is I'm going to be playing the scene that I recut to open this look back at the show. The scene with the Mandalorian and the Mandos and the armorer, where we first learned about the Purge and all that stuff. I kind of cut the scene up a little bit. I'm going to recut around those so you don't have to listen to the sound clip again, because it is the exact one that I played all the way through, leading into this older episode that we are now re-reviewing. So just a little more explanation for you. I hope that makes some sense. So those heavy footsteps you hear are more Mandalorians from the Enclave as they make their way into the scene here. And this is a big first for the Star Wars universe, because for the first time in live action, we are seeing more than one Mandalorian on the screen interacting with each other. And this is a misspeak on my part. what I was doing is I sort of was living in my old canon world where Boba Fett was still considered a Mandalorian, which he is not. And that is something we'll talk about in another episode further down the road. So please excuse that mistake. Only one real Mandalorian's been seen in live action, and that is Din Djarin.
We get to hear a ton of vital information about more of the Mandalorian culture and more of what exactly has happened to the Mandalorians, this once great people, this once great culture of the Star Wars galaxy.
Again, it's just me further breaking down a scene that I'm playing out. I'm kind of doing like a John Madden-esque breakdown of this entire scene. But since I played it the scene in its entirety leading into the show, we'll just get into the analysis. Here we go.
Okay, so that's big chunks of information right there already. One Mandalorian at a time, they're protecting their numbers, they're hiding from the Empire still. And now the Mandalorian and our Mandalorian are engaged in a vibroblade fight.
The Empire is no longer, and the Beskar has returned. When one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey. How can one be a coward if one chooses this way of life? Have you ever removed your helmet?
No,
Has it ever been removed by others?
never.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
So there you go, big chunks of...
Okay, I left that one in because it's just pretty great dialogue and I loved it.
what's going on with the Mandalorians, why they're in this enclave, why we've never seen... It'll be interesting to see if they actually talk about Boba Fett to any kind of defining extent. You know, as far as like live action goes, I mean, the last time he's seen in live action is when he is dispatched into the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi. It was only through the expanded universe canon that Disney's kind of washed away that he was brought back to life and was very present for like the next 20 plus years of Star Wars lore. But that may not be the case now with Disney calling the shots on these things. So it'd be interesting to see if any of this wraps around and loops together with Boba Fett himself.
All right, so I'm back in again because here I am again talking about Boba Fett as if he is a Mandalorian, and again, that's me living in this Star Wars Legends world, the old canon that I kind of grew up with. To reiterate, Boba Fett not a Mandalorian, but it does stand to reason that at some point Boba Fett will dovetail into this series. In the new canon, in the new lore, Boba Fett is a pretender. He wears the armor, but he is not of Mandalore. He does not walk the way. He does not know the way. He does not live by the code. So it'll be interesting to see if Din Djarin and Boba Fett ever cross paths on this series. I feel like it's inevitable, but we'll see how that plays out. There's much to talk about as far as things to get into for season 2. But again, that's me making a mistake living in a pre-Disney Star Wars canon. Sorry.
We definitely get the impression from this scene that, this is the second episode in which this Great Purge is referenced on the show. The first time around was back in Chapter 1, the opening episode. And I wasn't quite sure how to comment on it because I didn't quite know what it was. My first reaction was that they were referring to the Jedi Purge as some kind of marker in time for galactic history, and that whatever happened to the Mandalorians happened around the same time. It seems as if there was a second Great Purge, and this one is the one that is directly applicable to the Mandalorians and their people. And again, it definitely sounds like it was at the hands of the Empire, who wiped them out and then took all their Beskar. And ever since then, they've had to kind of live in secrecy. It's fascinating stuff to kind of have to parse through. And now that our Mandalorian's in possession of all this Beskar, he's in prime position to be more known throughout the galaxy, as the armorer warns him. A full suit of Beskar armor is going to draw a lot of attention, bring a lot of notice onto him. And that's pretty much exactly what's going to happen. Before that happens, we still have more scenes with the armorer as she is preparing to forge this new armor for our hero. Well, maybe he's not our hero now. He just turned in Baby Yoda. We can't be that happy with the guy. she offers to forge a signet for him, and wants to to base it off the Mudhorn, with whom damaged his armor so severely that he needs to have this new armor. But the Mandalorian has to politely decline because it was not a noble kill because of the actions of Baby Yoda. The Force, Baby Yoda using the Force to suspend and confuse the Mudhorn is what allowed the Mandalorian to kill it in Chapter 2. So he has to, his code, his honor, his sense of honor compels him to decline. And it's curious that he chooses to describe Baby Yoda initially as an enemy to the armorer, and then he has to explain to the armorer that the enemy didn't even know he was an enemy. And I think that's because he's referring to a baby as the enemy. It's a very interesting choice of words that the Mandalorian makes. And since he declines the signet, the armorer offers to use the excess for what's called whistling birds. What's that? Does that sound like it might be something important? It sure might. We'll get back to that later. It's interesting also to note that here the Mandalorian makes note to the armorer that the excess after that should go to the foundlings, of which we know he is one, and we will see more of that throughout this episode too. So as the weaponer is forging the new armor for the Mandalorian, the character we're following, I'm not going to call him a hero right now, we see he begins to experience flashbacks to his childhood. Prior to being a foundling, he had to be lost first. So we are taken back to his childhood, something we flashed back to before. When he was a small child, his planet, his town, wherever it is he's living with his parents is now under attack. And we see for the first time the attackers are super battle droids. We don't know any other context than that. We see his parents running with him in their arms, trying to get him as a boy to safety, a small boy to safety, very young. And his parents are killed, we assume, by the super battle droid, because the super battle droid is what opens the cellar doors that he is hiding in. Now, we don't know what happens after that, because we flash back to the present as his armor is done being forged.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the flashback sequence with Din Djarin as a child, because we have to ask the question, does this happen during the Separatist War? Is this a Separatist versus the Republic battle, and this town, this village is caught in the crossfire between Separatists, or the Separatists and the New Republic, I should say, or the Republic, as it's just called then, or is this something different? Is this perhaps something early Imperial with a Moff who maybe has a battalion of super battle droids? Like, does Moff Gideon perhaps factor into the origin of Din Djarin? Who knows so far? I think the Separatist is the likely bet, but there could be a personal connection with Moff Gideon to be revealed.
And so now it's time for the Mandalorian to don his new armor, and he's going to go over to meet with his bounty hunter representative, Mr. Grief Karga, Carl Weathers. And as predicted by the weaponeer, as predicted by the armorer, the riches of the Mandalorian do not go unnoticed, and they seem to go very, very, very unappreciated, as his fellow bounty hunters in the bar are not stoked that he is the one who came away with the prize. It's also interesting to note how every bounty hunter in that bar seems to have the tracking fob that he was given by the Imperial, but none of them seem to get very far as the acquisition of Baby Yoda, the acquisition of the bounty. It is funny to note, well, it's not funny to note. I was a little surprised, actually, that this episode started kind of the way it did. I thought for sure we might get more of a melee action scene to open this episode where other bounty hunters are attempting to intercept him on his way back to the planet and steal Baby Yoda so they can take over the bounty. Instead, it seems that, he was able to leave the prior planet and return to this planet unimpeded. But that doesn't mean the other bounty hunters like him. I think that's far from the case, especially as he's trying to now, in his new Beskered up outfit, get back to the bounty hunting business, which surprises Karga to a good extent. It's a pretty funny scene. It's a pretty funny scene with Karga, because the he seems to be the only one happy to see the Mandalorian in the bar. Everyone else is not stoked, and Karga is more than happy to point out that they're all a bunch of losers who failed because they all had the tracking fobs and they didn't do anything about it. And then Karga reveals that even he got to be rich off the Mandalorian's success. As he reveals, he has a couple of bars of Beskar now as well that he has conveniently hidden in his chest pocket. That might have been foreshadowing for something. We'll talk about it later. The Mando wants a new bounty. It's time for a new bounty. He's got to get back out there. We're not quite sure why he's so driven. Is it because the rewards that is it because what he collects for bounties is going to his people, to the Mandalorians, to kind of get them back on their feet? Is that why he's so driven to do this, or is there something else going on? Not quite sure. We're not sure to say. I think it seems reasonable to assume that because there are so few Mandalorians out and about at one time, these finances again are going to help the cause, to help his people. So he needs a new assignment, and he picks one, and he's going to go hunt down a nobleman's son, a calamari.
Mon calamari is the correct word, Tom. Jesus, get it together.
If the ones who look like Admiral Akbar, and so we're like, oh, he's going to go track down we're going to go to a water planet, right? That's the next mission. Seems like that's the next mission. Except remember, this episode is titled The Sin, and there's a couple sins that you can talk about in this episode. The first one being the actual giving of Baby Yoda to the Imperials. Another sin could be his professional sin, where he sort of broke the code by asking his client what they intended to do with the person. And there could be a little bit more coming up, too. We'll get a little bit further into the level of sinning going on here. But the Mandalorian can't leave without asking a couple questions.
Any idea what they're going to do with it?
With what?
The kid.
I didn't ask. It's against the guild code.
They work for the Empire. What are they doing here?
The Empire is gone, Mando. All that are left are mercenaries and warlords. But if it bothers you, just go back to the core and report them to the New Republic.
That's a joke.
Ooh, low blow.
Mando, enjoy your rewards. Buy a Campton of spice. By the time you come out of hyperdrive, you will have forgotten all about it.
I don't know. Doesn't seem like it. So clearly the kid is still on the Mandalorian's mind, and as he makes his way back to his shuttle to go after the new bounty, sitting in the cockpit, getting the Razor Crest ready to go, he sees the lever and the little ball knob that goes on top of the lever missing again, and it reminds him of the kid. And it's then and there that the Mandalorian makes the decision that he's going back and he's saving Baby Yoda. I think it reminds him of his childhood, to be perfectly honest, where someone helped him, someone stepped forward to save him, or else he would have died. And now he sees the same thing with this Baby Yoda, perhaps. Maybe I'm speculating, maybe I'm making wild assumptions.
Or maybe I'm dead right.
But that seems to be what's going on here. You know, he sees an innocent and he wants to help protect it. And what we get next is the Mandalorian returning to the Imperial compound and doing what Mandalorians do best, which is just fight the fuck out of people. This is a great action sequence. Again, make note, particularly during this sequence, because, as we said, Deborah Chow is going to be doing the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So it's impressive to see what kind of chops she has using the Mandalorian to engage in combat with stormtroopers. It's pretty rad. It's a great action sequence. And those whispering birds that the armorer created for the Mandalorian come in pretty handy once he gets surrounded at a certain point. And it's just a really cool sequence with the character, and kind of cements what he'll go through to get this kid. And so he rescues Baby Yoda, and Dr. Pershing's in the lab with him, and he's asking what he's done to the kid, and Pershing says that he's the reason why the baby's still alive. Apparently, the other Imperials wanted to kill the kid. As the Mandalorian is staking out the Imperial compound, we hear parts of a conversation between Pershing and the client, the Werner Herzog character, where Werner Herzog basically wants to be done with the child. He wants to figure out how to extract whatever material. He says the word, extract the materials from the child. What is he talking about? You were not quite sure. A reasonable assumption is midichlorians. Something so that the Empire can figure out how to make their own Jedis. Perhaps we're not quite sure. That is a speculation on my part, but it seems to be logical speculation. And unless there's something else going on with the Yoda species that they are interested in, perhaps they don't even know about the Force powers. Perhaps they want something to do with his species' longer lifespans, and Werner Herzog's dying, and he wants to live forever. I don't. You could go in a lot of different ways with these villains. So, but I think Force powers seems to be the most reasonable, the most likely. It is Star Wars, Force, midichlorians. It'd be kind of a crazy thing for them to resuscitate the midichlorian arguments, because the prequels were divisive, and midichlorians were one of the big divisive parts, especially of Episode 1, and they were never mentioned again in Episode 2 and 3. So Jon Favreau could be making a very bold choice by bringing the midichlorians back into the conversation with Star Wars. But again, that leads to the action sequence. We see the Mandalorian rip the ball droid in half to get in and tricks a bunch of stormtroopers, blows up a bunch of stormtroopers, unleashes the flamethrower on a stormtrooper. We get a crispy fried We get a crispy fried stormtrooper out of this battle. It's fantastic. So cool. So many good shots. And again, this show has a big budget. Don't get me wrong. But they have to spread this budget out over the 9-episode length of the series. And they do a lot of really cool stuff to make sure that budget gets stretched out. But they use a good chunk of it on this close quarters combat scene, where the Mandalorian uses a bunch of different ways to kill stormtroopers. It's pretty freaking cool. But this isn't the hard part. This is the easy part. Because what's going to happen next is fucking crazy. So what happens next in a very cool scene, but something I was still a little curious about, and I've been trying to figure out exactly what happened. As the Mandalorian exits the Imperial compound with Baby Yoda in his arms, we flash back to the bar, to the cantina, where all the other bounty hunters are holed up. All the bounty hunters who hate the Mandalorian, by the way. Important detail. And as they're standing there with their they still have their tracking fobs, and all of a sudden their tracking fobs reactivate, saying that the bounty's back on. Now, I'm curious how that all works, because, is it one of those things where the tracking device automatically activates as Baby Yoda leaves the compound, implying he has some kind of chip in him? Or does the Werner Herzog character, the client, does he reactivate the bounty fobs? Because he's the only character we don't see in the Imperial compound. So perhaps he was somewhere else witnessing the Mandalorian slaughtering his troops, and reissues the bounty hunter and activates all the fobs again. Again, that's not quite crystal clear, but it's a pretty cool scene as all these bounty hunters in the cantina realize that it's back on, and they begin to surround him and swarm him in the streets of this town. And it leads to another super cool action sequence for the Mandalorian to have to face off against every other bounty hunter in this town as he tries to make his way back to the Razor Crest with Baby Yoda. And he's doing pretty good for the most part. He seems to be doing all right. But then Reef shows up, Reef Karga, goddamn Carl Weathers. And Carl's he's not the Mando's friend anymore. The Mandalorian has now broken the code of the bounty hunters. Another possible interpretation of the sin that the bounty hunter is committing here, as he's now betraying the guild that he's part of. What happens next, as the Mandalorian seems to be in an impossible situation, despite the fact that he keeps refusing to surrender, is the stuff of Star Wars history. Because what happens next is incredible. Surrounded by his enemies, trapped on a sled, the Mandalorian looks Baby Yoda in the eyes, and he knows that this is probably the end for both of them. When just behind him, a rocket streaks across the sky. And suddenly, from out of nowhere, the Mandalorians rise, and they unleash holy hell on the bounty hunters who are trying to kill one of their own. And I'm not going to lie, it's one of those moments that just gets me so fucking geeked out, so geeked up, and just... so I love the Star Wars universe. It's awesome. It's awesome. I've watched it 75,000 times in 2 days because it's so fucking cool. It's again, I've talked about my love of the Mandalorians, of the culture of the Mandalorians, and to see them rise up together is something we haven't seen before. There's been variations of it in animated series, in Clone Wars, in Rebels, but to see it real life in real time, to see it in live action, live action series, is something else, and they are just as impressive as I've always wanted them to be in live action. It's an incredibly great sequence, and I want to watch it 75,000 more times because it's so good. The music's so good. The score is so good. The action direction by Deborah Chow is on point. It's awesome. They got jetpacks and blaster rifles and missile launchers. It's so good. It's the coolest thing I've seen so far in the show, and this show's been cool for all 3 episodes. But this just blows it out of the water. This takes it up another like 3 levels in one scene. It's awesome. It's so good. So they're able to take care of these bounty hunters. They give their Mandalorian compadre the cover fire that he needs for him and Baby Yoda to take off to the Razor Crest. And that's exactly what they do. And, our Mandalorian has to acknowledge to the other Mandalorians that they're no longer going to be safe there. They have to leave that enclave there where they've been hiding out. And, the Mandalorians, they have a saying now, and they say it again. That is the way. And they just accepted it and move on. But they had to help their brother in arms, and they weren't going to let him get taken out by a bunch of piddly ass bounty hunters, a bunch of dum-dums. No way, no way. So Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian make it back to the Razor Crest, but that Greef Karga, you can't get rid of him. They have one more confrontation inside the Razor Crest, inside the bay of the Razor Crest, and that's when Greef gets it right in the chest and blown out of the back of the ship. And the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are able to take off. But we see that Greef got hit right where he was keeping his Beskar. So Carl Weathers is not dead. Carl Weathers could be coming after the Mandalorian still. I suspect he will play a big part in coming after the Mandalorian going forward.
So something I've thought about since rewatching the series over and over again, and this is not a new theory, not a radical thought, but I think I believe that the Mandalorian knew that Greef had the Beskar there. Greef made a point of showing him that Beskar was on his person, and the Mando hits him right there. I sort of think the Mando did that on purpose, as kind of a way to thank Greef for everything he did for him despite breaking the code, because the Mando knows he broke the code. Just my 2 cents on that.
So that's how this episode ends, just like the way the last episode ended, with the with the Mandalorian, with Baby Yoda rising from a planet and taking off for hyperspace together, but now completely different context, as the bounty hunter knows that he's no longer a bounty hunter. First of all, he's now on the run, and as the armorer said during that exchange we listened to a little bit earlier, being a Mandalorian is being hunter and prey, and the first 2 3/4 of these shows, he was the hunter. But now it appears that he's going to be prey, and he's going to have to go and find some allies to help protect him and Baby Yoda. Probably mostly Baby Yoda. It seems like he can fend for himself, but he still does have his brand new shiny Beskar armor. But people are going to be coming after him, so it's going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be very interesting to see how the show shakes out next. I'm really, really, really excited about what's coming up next. And, gosh darn, there's so much to kind of think about and replay and watch over and over again. At the very, very end, as the episode's closing out and they're taking off for orbit, to leave orbit, I should say, to leave the planet. Yeah, it's pretty great. You just see a little Baby Yoda hand reach up to the controller lever, and the Mandalorian just spins that little ball topper off the lever, and he hands it to Baby Yoda, and it's so fucking adorable. Melt your heart from heartbreak to joyous, raucous applause. That's how this show went today. Our hero, he let us down at the beginning, but he got us back by the end, and I think that's all that really matters, right? And we get a chance to find out more about Baby Yoda in the future. It's going to be incredible. So much to talk about this episode. I can sing its praises forever and ever and ever, and I probably will. Again, there's a lot of information to kind of parse through. I've said that before with the show, but certain scenes kind of allude to a much grander tapestry of the Star Wars universe, and I love it. I love it. And I hope they keep kind of pulling on the threads of that tapestry, and we get a little bit more information as we go along. And yeah, the show continues to surprise. I complained a little bit last week that the second episode was only 30 minutes long, but they managed to jam pack a lot of show into those 30 minutes. This episode was no different. It was a tad longer, about 37-ish minutes, if you take out that minute-long recap at the very, very beginning. But you're telling a lot of story, and there's not a lot of fluff in there. They're not killing a lot of time. I love that we're following one character for the duration of the series, at least through the 3 episodes. We're not stuck with some giant ensemble cast, and we're following characters that we're not as invested in. That's kind of a rare thing nowadays, I think, with a lot of shows. And I love that we're not doing that. I get a little bored with that. I mean, it's if I were to break down my list of complaints for The Walking Dead and other shows of that ilk, it's like we spend a lot of time with characters that I don't give a fuck about. This is all characters I give a fuck about. It's The Mandalorian. It's his show. It should be about him. Now, if you want to give me some more Baby Yoda, I'm not going to get mad at you. But yeah, let's keep the focus where we're supposed to, right here in the middle of the story. Let's keep the fluff out of this. Nice, cohesive, concise storytelling. That's what I want out of my Star Wars, goddammit. Oh, so good. I'm so pumped up now. Watching the Mandalorians descend on those dum-dums and whoop their ass. Incredible. And you also get to find out that our hero, the Mandalorian, is jealous. He has a little rocket envy of some of the other Mandalorians. Wants to get himself a jetpack one day. Maybe that'll be his next level up. I don't know. He's got the Beskar, though. That's a pretty good level up on its own. We'll have to see how that shakes out as the season progresses. Oh, man. Okay, let's wrap it up. I'm just gushing here, and you guys are probably sick of it. Hey, everybody. Tom interrupting my own podcast for a little bit of an update because there was a couple things that, in my excitement, I forgot to discuss with everybody. So let's go back just for a minute to the raid, the Mando's raid on the Imperial compound, on the bunker, the rescuing of Baby Yoda. All right, 2 things we got to mention here that I think we need to pay attention to. When the Mando enters Pershing's lab, Baby Yoda's on an examination table with an IT-0 interrogator droid floating above little Baby Yoda. It's that little ball floaty droid with the syringe that you might remember from A New Hope. He's in the prison cell with Princess Leia. Not a nice droid. What's the purpose of the droid? Is this the extraction process they were talking about earlier in the scene? Or is this, some kind of twisted interrogation on a baby? We're not quite clear on that. The only thing that we come out for sure is that Pershing seems to be in defense of Baby Yoda, and that he's, on Team Baby Yoda like the rest of us. Or he was just lying so that the Mando didn't blow his face off. Another thing that I caught on a recent viewing, shortly after I recorded the episode, hey, I'm not perfect. I don't get it all the first couple of times. A patch on Dr. Pershing's uniform suggests he may have a connection to the cloning facilities of Kamino. And that goes back to something we talked about previously. Is Baby Yoda a clone? Are they trying to clone the baby? Not quite sure. Still got a lot to figure out on that front. But it does appear to be some kind of connection to Kamino and the cloning facilities. Possible red herring, but I don't think that's there for any other reason than to say, hey, look, clones. Then something else I got a little bit of clarification on after I had initially recorded the episode was that the Mandalorian that engages in the vibro knife fight and is basically the only other Mandalorian to have any actual real dialogue in this episode was indeed voiced by Jon Favreau, which I had suspected, but I wasn't quite sure because of the filter on his voice. But that has been confirmed. And it's also confirmed that he played a character named Paz Vizsla. This is interesting because on the Clone Wars animated series, Jon Favreau played another Mandalorian during the Clone Wars named Pre Vizsla. Obviously, they have the same last name. So is this the same family? Is there a connection to, is this a coincidence, or is there a larger connection here to the Vizsla family of the Clone Wars series, which the Vizsla was involved in the Death Watch, which was a group of Mandalorian warriors that was counter to the peaceful initiatives of Duchess Satine. Great episodes of the show, but we can dive into more of that later. Just want to get that information out for everybody so that you had a more full picture of the ongoing events of the show. And with that, I'm going to get back into my regularly scheduled wrap-up of the episode. All right, thanks so much, guys. And with that, I'm going to wrap the show up. But we are here. The holidays have begun. This is the week of Thanksgiving. So, I don't know who listens to the Watchmen episodes, who listens to the Mandalorian episodes. So I'm gonna say it on both episodes this week. I want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have the best of times with all your friends, all your family, anybody you're celebrating the holiday with. Or if you're just going to hang out by yourself and crush a whole turkey on your own, I'm kind of jealous of you. You have to share the leftovers, and that's the way to live life to its fullest. All right, you guys take care of each other, and we will talk again very, very soon. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao, babes.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Hey, so there it is. That's the episode. That's the initial review I did for The Mandalorian Chapter 3, The Sin. I thought it was a pretty strong review. I thought it was pretty funny. I had forgotten that I had gone back into the show to mention the stuff about the Vizsla family and how that insignia kind of popped up on the shoulder pauldron of one of the self-described heavy infantry Mandalorian, as he was later dubbed. So a little bit of the Vizsla family kind of carrying through. We haven't talked too much about Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, but they are definitely shows that are worth your time to explore and to kind of enrich your Star Wars viewing experience. Not just for its Mandalorian connections that will further enrich your experience watching The Mandalorian, but it's a better way. It's if you happen to live on that side of the fence that likes to ding the Star Wars prequels movies as kind of being, half-baked, a little underdeveloped kind of things, the Clone Wars in particular will give you a better opinion of the prequels, and it will also help to kind of give you a better opinion of Anakin Skywalker. The Clone Wars does a fantastic job developing Anakin Skywalker into a character who, when he has his inevitable fall to the dark side, it's a much more tragic fall because we've seen him be the hero that he can be. But we also see more of those dark steps that he takes on his journey to becoming Darth Vader. But great stuff with Ahsoka Tano, who is rumored to be a big part of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, as all the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels canon looks like it's coming together. So if you want to get an appreciation for Ahsoka, you highly recommend going back and diving into Star Wars: The Clone Wars. The first season's a little long in the tooth, a lot of two-part episodes that maybe didn't need to be, but that's okay. By Season 2, we really get rolling, and the characters really become their own things, and not just animated versions of what we thought we knew from the movies. So really worth your time and effort to revisit Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and Star Wars Rebels. And this is probably a theme you'll hear on later episodes of the show too, because as we get more and more into the Mandalorian mythology, I make more and more of a point of saying, hey, go watch these, and particularly by the end. All right, so I think that's pretty much everything I have for you guys today. I had some interruptions in there where I interjected a few things. One thing I thought about that I was curious about, and we don't get a real great answer, and I wonder if it's something that's going to be forthcoming on the series, is, what did the Empire do with the Beskar? They had the purge of the Mandalorians. They wiped out a bunch of them. They basically strip mined the planet of Mandalore for Beskar. But why? What are they doing with it? What did they do with it? Is it connected to the Death Star project? Is Beskar some was that the alloy or the metal used to make some kind of key component in the Death Star's laser mechanism, perhaps? I mean, we don't know for sure. Or does it have more to do with Moff Gideon, who seems to be rather involved in the fate of the Mandalorians, at least from the limited context that we get in the season finale in Episode 8. But again, these are just things to explore later on, to talk about more and more as we kind of get into things. So I'm gonna end the show now. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you all so much for listening. I truly, truly appreciate it. And again, do that social media thing. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to email me, if you want to get a long screed in my face, do it at tomcastpopcast@gmail.com. That is the best way to get a hold of me for email purposes. And if for some reason you are digging the show and you want to back it financially, do so at patreon.com/TomcastPopcast. Remember, I have 2 podcasts. These are 2 sister shows, and one podcast to get you access. I'm sorry, one Patreon donation gets you access to bonus content that would be for both shows. So a little extra bang for your buck. And with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. I've been having a really good time re-exploring and re-reviewing my reviews of The Mandalorian Season 1. And again, we're in September now, and we're flying fast and furious towards Season 2. So more and more information is coming. It's only a matter of time before the trailer drops, and we'll be breaking that down on the show. So these review episodes might get interrupted from time to time when Mandalorian Season 2 news does drop. So stay with us. We're going to be on the forefront of Mandalorian news. And with that, I wrap it up, and we say what we always say on Mandovision. This is the way.
Ah, Mando! They all hate you, Mando, because you're a legend.
How many of them had tracking fobs?
Phew. All of them. All of them! But not one of them closed the deal. Only you, Mando. Only you. And with it, the richest reward this parsec has ever seen. Please, sit, my friend. They're all weighing the Beskar in their minds, but not me. No. I, for one, I celebrate your success, because it is my success as well. Hell, even I'm rich. Now, how can I show my gratitude to my most valuable partner?
I want my next job.